Things just took a very surprising twist as no one saw this coming following multiple new reports, including one from the most notable reporter himself, surrounding the Jays and an outfielder that has big implications going forward as we get deeper and deeper into the offseason and free agency. We'll break down exactly who this player is and discuss why no one saw it coming, but also a bunch of other updates, including some interesting notes surrounding arbitration following the deadline passing yesterday, and some new signings happening across the MLB that have, of course, a big impact on the Jays' spending plans. A ton to go over in this episode, folks, but before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, you guys have been absolute beasts with the support. It truly means the world to myself, and thank you guys for the continued support over here. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of movement is starting to happen slowly but surely across the MLB. Another reliever has been signed, which we'll dive into later, but folks, no one really saw this coming. You can see here from a couple days ago, the initial report dropped from Jeff Passan, and we have a new one that dropped late last night into this morning, but it's that the Blue Jays are among teams interested in Cody Bellinger, and this one is super interesting. Now, if you remember back to the Jeff Passan report, there was a bunch of things in there, and there was a little hidden tidbit about Cody Bellinger and the Toronto Blue Jays should they miss out on Kyle Tucker. But let's dive into the full report here. You can see here the Yankees are known to have interest in reuniting with Bellinger even after Grisham accepted his qualifying offer. Now, Bellinger had already been connected to the Mets, and Jeff Passan reports the Blue Jays and Dodgers have interest in him as well. I'll dive into the full report from Passan in a minute here, but Passan essentially notes the Jays want a left-handed complement to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Cody Bellinger is an interesting one. Now, obviously, this would be the case of the Jays missing out on Kyle Tucker, right? You can see here Bellinger hasn't been quite at Tucker's level for most of the recent past, but he is coming off of a better platform season. Passan writes the Jays view Bellinger as an acceptable fallback to Tucker. So these are all interesting notes, and according to all reports, they're all in on Kyle Tucker, but their fallback plan at this point is Cody Bellinger. And we're looking at the Yankees, who just got their qualifying offer accepted by Trent Grisham. They have Spencer Jones. They have Jason Dominguez. They have, of course, Aaron Judge. They have a lot of guys in the outfield, and their priority initially was to bring back Cody Bellinger, but recent comments from Brian Cashman may seem otherwise now, or rather may make it seem like otherwise. In 2025, of course, Cody Bellinger was really good, and besides a couple of down years for Bellinger, he's been really elite. So he had a 272 average with a 334 on base percentage with a 480 slugging, which was a WRC plus of 125. Very solid defender, really solid, base runner. And he actually didn't, you look at it here, there were some concerning elements under the hood. There was some concerning things, but at Yankee Stadium, he performed way better, worse on the road, and didn't do great. Obviously, he did decent against the Jays throughout the season, and of course, they lost in the playoffs. But for Cody Bellinger, I find this extremely interesting. Let's look at his advanced analytics. One of the best defenders in the game, which obviously falls well into the Jays' plans. But it's interesting and unexpected because you can make room for a guy like Kyle Tucker when you have Anthony Santander. What happens if you bring in a guy like Cody Bellinger, who's a fantastic defender? Are you going to run Varsho in center, Bellinger in left, and then, who in right? Obviously, there's a bunch of different guys you go with. You go Berger, you could go with, and of course, you have Dalton Varsho there. You go George Springer by chance, Nathan Lucas. There's a lot of different areas there. I feel like I'm missing somebody. We'll dive into it later. There's a bunch of different areas where you could go, but Santander is obviously the main one that initially you'd want to put in right field, right? But at the same time, Bellinger's a better hitter, at least last year, a better defender. And then if you would have to move Santander to DH, which then what happens with George Springer? The Santander thing is what makes this all that much more, confusing if you want to put it in that way. And we can dive into the full report here from Passan himself. Beyond the Yankees, who would like a return engagement with Bellinger, particularly if Trent Grisham rejects, which he accepted, the Blue Jays see him as a perfectly good alternative to Tucker. And the Dodgers, who non-tendered Bellinger 3 years ago, have expressed interest as they peruse the outfield market. So very notable stuff here. Now let's dive into the projected kind of outfield spots. Now, they have Davis Schneider, right? You have Miles Straw. Barisho's going to start in center. Lucas is projected to start in left, and then Santander in right. In theory, you could just put Bellinger in left instead of Lucas, and then maybe trade Lucas for a bullpen piece or something like that. And that would be, I think, the most likely outcome here if things were to happen, because he's a better defender than Lucas, he's a better hitter than Lucas, and he's also a lefty, so it could slide into there perfectly. And an outfield of Cody Bellinger, Dalton Varsho, and whether it be Berger, Santander, or Springer, is absolutely elite. And I'm not going to count out George Springer from having a great year next year, but it's doubtful it'll have the same year as what he did last season. And you look at the DH spots, it's going to be split between Santander and Springer. So maybe they, only run Santander against favorable matchups. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. I like Cody Bellinger. I just do. And I know a lot of fans don't because he was a Yankee, all these different things. He's a great, great baseball player and someone that I don't think would have a huge fall off. And especially with his defense, he doesn't have great advanced analytics. But if they don't get Kyle Tucker, I wouldn't hate it. That being said, Bichette has to be the priority. There's probably a few other guys I'd rather them go after, especially bats. But at the same time, you have such a crowded infield, crowded outfield. I mean, you're going to be running Barger at third for most of the year. Hopefully, Jimenez at short and Bichette at second. What do you do with Ernie Clement then? Do you have him as a super utility man playing a bunch of different positions? We saw him play a little bit of outfield, I believe it was, in 2024. Correct me down below if I'm wrong. That was obviously a long time ago. I don't think he played any last year. But there's a lot of ways to go about it. And it's going to be interesting to see. But when Jeff Passan speaks, we listen. And it's more likely now because Trent Grisham accepted the qualifying offer that he leaves the Yankees. Jays could be in play for him. The question is, A, how long will it take for Kyle Tucker's market to develop? And B, will he be gone by the time that the Jays either A, correct out in Kyle Tucker, or hopefully B, get Kyle Tucker? And if they get Kyle Tucker, then of course none of this matters because they're not going to get Tucker and Bellinger. So let me know what your thoughts are on this. Some very interesting things. And no one really saw it coming with Cody Bellinger, but Passan is reporting that it is. Now, a couple other things to go over. The Blue Jays, like I mentioned in yesterday's video, in the nighttime, they are tendering contracts to all 4 of their arbitration-eligible players as expected. So Varsho, Lauer, Clement, and Heineman will all go through arbitration. We've seen this before. So, I mean, raises all the way around. Clement's going to get a big raise. Lauer's going to get a big raise. Varsho's going to get probably a big raise. And Heineman's going to get a big raise as well. They'll all remain with the Toronto Blue Jays, though. I can't imagine they're going to, they'll come to an agreement, I think, without having to get the arbitrators involved. But at the same time, good news. Good news all around. They didn't non-tender any of these guys, meaning they saved the salary, which means they view them all as integral pieces. And of course, every one of these, I mean, obviously, right? 2 of them are not stars, but 2 of them are regulars on a World Series team, and the other 2 were backup / in Lauer's case, I guess a Swiss Army knife out of the bullpen / starting rotation. So that's some other notes there. Also, this was a new report from Mark Feinstein that dropped. Besides, the market for Bellinger will be active and lucrative, and this was very recent, so shout out if you made it this far. The Yankees remain interested in Bellinger even after Trent Grisham accepted the QO. The Blue Jays have been connected to Bellinger as well and are very open to adding a left-handed complement. These are surely many other teams, or rather, there are surely many other teams interested in the star left-handed slugger. So this is a new report that dropped as well from Mark Feinstein. So this one is also interesting because another reporter saying that the Jays are interested in a lefty bat. It seems like they're really going after one. Tucker, Bellinger, if you don't strike out in either of those, you're good. Bichette, his name has been a bit more quiet lately. It doesn't seem like the market there is moving quickly or as quickly as many people thought, which does make sense. That was something that Ben Nicholson-Smith reported early on, that it's going to be a slow-moving market. Keegan Matheson, who, again, I had the interview a few days ago. Feel free to check that out after you've watched this one in its entirety. He said that Bichette's market's going to move slow. It's going to be interesting to see how the Jays adapt, and it's going to be interesting. Like Jeff Passan said, they're coming off their first World Series berth. They have no plans of stopping. It seems like the Jays are going all in on multiple different fronts.